My name is Sharlene and I'm a nutrition and food science teacher. I went into teaching at a very young age, basically to ease the financial burden at home. I think it's finally time for me to pursue my passion in cooking and do something for myself. I want to be the next MasterChef to inspire the next generation to pursue their dreams.
Hi, good evening everyone. My name is Sharlene and I was from MasterChef Season 3. I was top 4 in that season. I am an ex-educator. I used to teach what you would know as nutrition and food science or home economics. And after MasterChef, I resigned from teaching. I now conduct WSQ classes at Farms Asia. So I still teach, I just teach adults instead of children. At the same time, I also run my own small home-based business called Artisan Food, where I mostly sell sourdough bread and bakes. Today, I'm going to share with you a Christmas recipe for a German Christmas bread called Stollen, together with a marzipan filling on the inside. So if you're ready, let's get started. So let me introduce the ingredients to you. Of course, we're making bread, so we have bread flour. I have 340 grams of regular bread flour. We have 65 grams of sugar, together with 10 grams of instant yeast or dry yeast. 1 egg, large egg, and also 160 ml of milk. You can use any kind of milk, be it cow's milk, skim milk, or if you are vegetarian, use a plant-based milk, doesn't really matter. Okay. For the bread, we also have some dried fruit. The original recipe uses about 1 2/3 cup of dried fruit, but I've reduced that to 1 cup, so that's a bit less sweet and a little bit healthier. Okay. You can use any combination of dried fruit you like. Today, I have some cranberries, black raisins, chopped apricots, as well as homemade citrus peels. So these are orange peels that I cooked in sugar syrup and I dehydrated. Okay. If you want to make your own citrus peel, you can. There is a recipe in the Thermomix cookie dough. Optional tip, you can if you take rum, and if you want a more like Christmas, more authentic kind of feel free to pre-soak your fruits in a little bit of rum or alcohol, like brandy. Okay, so I have here, same 1 cup of dried fruit, but pre-soaked with a little bit of rum overnight. Okay, so just put them in a jar, shake it up, and then just leave it on your counter overnight. Once in a while, if you have the time, flip it upside down so that the rum can kind of absorb into all of the fruit. Okay. We also have a little bit of butter, 75 grams of butter, and 9 grams of salt. I normally put this aside and I mix it into the dough during the second part of the mixing process because I like the flour to have a little bit more gluten development. So I normally hold back on this for all my enriched breads. Okay. Another optional tip, I have here 80 grams of sourdough starter because I regularly bake sourdough bread. I actually have a starter. So for those of you that have a starter at home, if you are planning to get rid of some discard, you can actually incorporate a little bit of sourdough starter into your bread dough. So I use about 80 grams of sourdough discard. Doesn't have to be active. And if you are adding the 80 grams of sourdough discard, you simply minus off 40 grams of your bread flour and 40 grams of the milk, okay, to compensate for the discard. But if you don't have discard, then you just follow the original recipe and you use everything as is. So I'm going to move on to the demonstration. Don't worry if you didn't catch the recipe. The recipe link will be shared at the end of the entire video. At the same time, do stay to the end because we have a giveaway. Luzern has very generously sponsored a very expensive buffet dish, which we're going to use for baking. And this is a multi-purpose baking dish. You can also use it for plating, for serving. And Christmas is coming up. This would be great for baking your roast chicken. Okay? So hang on until the end. Right, so let's get started with the dough demonstration. You have already seen the ingredients. I'm going to start off by putting the ingredients into the Thermomix. I normally like to put in the liquid ingredients first, right at the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the milk. That's 160 ml or 160 grams of milk. I've got 1 large egg. I'm going to put in the sugar and the yeast at the bottom together with the liquid so that the yeast can dissolve a little bit. So that's 10 grams of yeast, 65 grams of sugar, followed by the bread flour, 340 grams. So if you are going to use your starter discard can actually go in together with the rest of the liquids right at the bottom. Okay, and then remember to deduct 40 grams flour, 40 grams of liquid. Okay. So I'm going to hold back on the salt and the butter. We're going to put on the lid. And okay, let me just turn this a little bit. So just regular speed, right? We just mix it up just a little bit before I start the dough mode. Okay, now we switch to dough mode, and I'm going to set this for about 3 minutes on the dough mode, and we're going to let this knead for about 3 minutes. I chose to break Stollen today because I think it's a less common recipe compared to fruitcake. Stollen bread is actually something I experimented with a couple of years ago. I happened to come across the recipe and I thought it sounded interesting. At that time, I was into bread baking, so I was trying out various kinds of breads. And my husband turned out that he loved the bread because it's a bit like a fruitcake, but maybe less rich and less sweet than a fruitcake. Yeah, and it ages well. It actually stores well. So the flavor actually gets better after a couple of days. Yeah, so I'm sharing it because it's something a bit less common. Hopefully you will enjoy it as much as we do. Alright, so now that the 3 minutes are up, I'm going to add in 75 grams of softened butter as well as the 9 grams of salt. So just sprinkle the salt in and add in the butter. And we're going to set this again on dough mode for another 2 minutes. So remember to take part in our Watch and Win so that you have a chance to win the Luzerne buffet dish. So now that the dough is done, come and take a look. You can take a look at the dough. This is a slightly sticky dough. Okay, I'm going to pour this out so you can take a look at the texture. Okay, there we go. Set this aside. Okay, now at this point you would normally you can oil your hands if you're afraid that it will stick. Okay, shape it and set it aside to rise for about 45 minutes to an hour until it has doubled nicely. Okay, so we just round up the dough and we're going to put this aside inside the mixing bowl. Set this aside until it has risen and doubled. Okay, in the interest of time, I have a dough that has been pre-risen already. So you can see in my mixing bowl, I have one that I have pre-made about 45 minutes to an hour before, and you can see that it has doubled. Let me take it out and show you the size compared to the original. Here you go. Okay, so this one has risen, right? Put this aside. And once your dough has risen, we can then laminate in our dried fruit. You put it out on your tabletop. Now my dough has been oiled, so it's not sticking, but if your dough is really sticky, you might want to flour your tabletop lightly or put a little bit of oil just to prevent it from sticking. Okay, so we spread out the dough gently into kind of a rectangle. Okay, then you can put on your fruit, either your dried fruit or the one soaked in rum. Spread it out. And I'm going to fold this up like a cheese roti prata. Yeah, so we're going to fold in 1/3. Fold in the opposite side. So what you get is a rectangle, a bit like a cheese prata. Then I'm going to put on some more fruit down the middle of the dough. And then we're going to fold it into thirds again. So 1/3 and then another 1/3. Okay. Seal up the seam. And also the sides if you can. Okay, pinch and close up the seam. Okay. Now, I would suggest that after you laminate, you let this rest a little bit. Let the dough relax a little bit before we try and do the final shaping. Okay, so we let this rest for maybe another about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll do the final shaping. Okay? In the meantime, let me show you how to make the marzipan filling. Okay? You can, of course, go to Pun Huat, Red Man, or anywhere and go and purchase ready-made marzipan. However, commercial marzipan does tend to be a little bit on the sweet side, okay? And it's really easy to make on your own. And you get a much better result. Plus, you can control the sugar level and the sweetness level on your own. So I have here blanched almonds. These are basically almonds without the skin. You can purchase this. You don't have to go and blanch your own almonds and peel the skin off. So I have 250 grams of blanched almonds. I'm going to just pour this into the Thermomix. Okay, and the Thermomix does a great job blending everything for you. Okay, so let's just turn this on, turn on the speed, and just let this grind for, at speed 10, maybe for a couple of seconds. Okay, here we go. So as you can see, the Thermomix does a fantastic job grinding your almonds into really fine powder, instant ground almonds. So I'm just going to scrape down the sides. And then we're going to add in the rest of the ingredients. Yeah. So here I have 180 grams of icing sugar. You can, of course, adjust the amount more or less depending on the sweetness level you like. Okay, I have reduced the sweetness, so I've actually added more almonds to the original amount of icing sugar. Okay, so 180 grams of icing sugar. And to bind all this together, we're going to use 1 egg white. Okay. For flavor, 1 teaspoon of rose water, which is optional. Some people add a combination of rose water and almond extract, or you can just do almond extract depending on what you like. Okay. I don't have almond extract, so I'm just going to use rose water. So 1 teaspoon of rose water. And we're going to put this on dough mode for about a minute, and everything will come together into a dough. So set your dough function 1 minute, and we can put on the dough. Check out. Once in a while, you might need to scrape down the bowl, just give it a bit of a check. If you find that your marzipan is not coming together, if it's too dry, you just pour in a little bit more egg white. Okay. If it's too moist, then you can add in a bit more ground almonds or a little bit more icing sugar. I'm going to give this a couple more seconds. Okay, there we go. So let me pour this out. And we can actually knead this by hand, finish it up into a marzipan. Okay. So right now, it's not come together 100% into a dough. Right, I'm going to pour this out. And we're going to finish this by hand and combine this into a dough. So again, you can of course adjust the texture with additional egg white, powdered almonds, or icing sugar. Okay? So if you squeeze gently, you'll see that it will come together. It looks a bit dry initially, but it will come together into a kind of a firm and stiff dough. So there you go. That's our marzipan. So you can see it. You see, it will come together. It will stick into a nice firm dough. Okay. Now this is actually enough marzipan for 2 loaves of Stollen bread. So you can actually store the other half. Store it in the freezer, cling wrap it, or keep it in the fridge. It will store well. Okay. Yeah. So that's it. Right. I'm going to open this up, flatten this out gently. Again, kind of keeping that rectangular shape. Okay. I'm going to take about half of the marzipan. Now again, you can adjust the quantity depending on what you like. Some people like marzipan, some people don't. If you don't like marzipan, feel free to omit this step completely. You can just shape it into a regular loaf and then just make it as a plain fruit bread. Okay? If you like marzipan, put a bit more. You don't like marzipan, put less. Doesn't matter. Okay? Roll this out into a log as equally as you can. Okay? When we put this in the indentation, okay, that middle part, the extra, let's just pinch this off. Okay? And then we're going to fold this over. Okay, so we fold the dough over. Okay, cover up the marzipan, and you're going to make this like little hump with the top part. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to set this aside and we'll let that rise for, I would say, another 30 to 45 minutes until it has kind of grown a little bit, not double, but maybe about 1.5 times the size, and then we will bake it. In the interest of time, I have pre-proofed 1 loaf of Stollen bread. Okay, so you can see it has doubled from the original, right? Okay, and it's ready to go into the oven. So we're going to pop this into the oven at about 180 degrees for the first maybe 10 minutes or so to let it like rise. And then we will lower down the temperature and continue baking for, I would say, another 25 to 30 minutes at 150 degrees Celsius. Okay, so let's get baking. I'm going to pop this into the oven. 180 degrees, 10 minutes. So I'm going to show you an alternative way of shaping. If you don't want to do an entire whole loaf, you can do mini versions of the Stollen bread with or without the marzipan. It's really up to you. It's a bit like a mini fruit bun. If you're planning to give them away as Christmas gifts, this is also a great way to, do smaller versions. So we have our dough with the fruit already done, laminated already. You can just cut your dough up. I don't have a dough scraper, so I'm just going to use a small butter knife. Portion up your dough into mini versions. You can, of course, adjust the size depending on how big or small you want your little buns to be. Okay. So I have here just a little bit of dough. Okay. Decide how much marzipan you want inside your little bun. Okay, you choose an appropriate size. Make little balls of the marzipan. And then flatten out your dough, smooth side facing down, right? So we want to hide all the ugly bits on the inside. Flatten out your dough a little bit. Usually around the edge. I normally try and keep the center part a little bit thicker so that you can compensate when you actually wrap up your filling. Put in your little ball of marzipan, and we're going to wrap this up a bit like wrapping a char siu bao. Okay, take opposite corners, put it over, pinch the other 2 sides as well. Okay, make sure you seal it up properly. Okay, turn it back round, right side up, and then you can just round it into a little bun. Okay, set this aside to proof, just like your whole loaf. And then once you're done, you can bake them. This one probably needs maybe only about 15 minutes. Definitely like shorter time, 15 to 20 minutes it should be done. Okay, depending on the size of your buns. And after you're done baking, same as the whole loaf, you would wrap them, brush a little bit of butter and then sprinkle on some icing sugar. Okay? So let me demo one more. Smooth side down. Okay? Remember, when you flatten out the dough, keep the middle part a little bit thicker to compensate. Put in your ball of marzipan. Okay, take opposite ends, pinch and seal. Same for the other 2 sides. Try and wrap the fruit on the inside, prevents it from burning. If you can hide them inside, that'd be great. Okay, and then just shape it round into a little bun and set this aside to proof. Okay, that's it. So mini Stollen buns. Okay, Now that our bread is ready and it's out from the oven, we're going to brush it with a little bit of butter. Traditionally, they actually brush it with probably alcohol like rum or brandy, but this is an alcohol-free version. So you can do butter. That's going to moisten up the crust, and it will also give the icing sugar something to stick to. Then sprinkle a generous layer of icing sugar. That's going to help to preserve the bread as well as make it look nice. So it will cover up any imperfections on your bread. This is our Christmas Stollen bread with homemade marzipan. I hope you enjoyed the show. See you again next time. Bye!